Hello everyone and welcome to this Minecraft Redstone tutorial. In this episode we are going to be constructing the moss farm that I have running behind me. Before we get started, this moss farm is designed based on the farm showcased by Etho in his Hermitcraft series. I have done a few modifications and tweaks to it, trying to make it a little bit less glitchy for me, a little bit more consistent. As you can see in this world, this is the fourth version that I've built, so I've been doing quite a bit of revisions. To give you an idea of dimensions, it is going to be 17 blocks wide, 10 blocks tall, and 15 blocks wide. So it's kind of an unusual size. It is relatively large, but you do need all of that space for all of the redstone and all of the item collection. I did not include this section down here because this is just the item distribution, so you can have this item stream go into a storage system. You can have it go into composters like I have here. This build is a really great way to get bone meal. So I primed the system with one full stack of bone meal, and if we just go ahead and check out down here, already we're at over a stack. The rates for this are approximately 2.5 times what you put in. So if you put in one stack of bone meal, you should get about 2.5 stacks out. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the build. We're going to start at the base here with the AutoDroppers and item transportation. So let me just pick up some blocks. And we're going to head over this way and get started on building it. So to get started, we need to have 5 droppers. Okay, just making sure. This is actually an auto-dropper system that I haven't used before. This is my first time using it, so it's not something that I can build off the top of my head very easily. So we have our 5 droppers. They're each going to have a hopper pointing down into them from the collection. We need a line of redstone dust. We need to have a block here and another block up here. Another chain of comparators. Then we're going to need a pair of hoppers pointing into each other. So, help if I could place things correct. So that's the back hopper placed correctly. Now just the front hopper. And the last thing we need is a torch. So the way that this auto dropper works is when there's an item in here, it will be detected by this comparator, which will depower this torch, allowing items to move back and forth through this hopper. This comparator will read the item whenever it is inside of this first hopper, give a signal. Because there's only one item, it's a signal strength of 1, so it only powers this first dropper. So we do need to prime all of these hoppers. Over here, we're going to be putting our water stream. And then on top of each of these hoppers, we're going to have a hopper minecart. So let me get a hopper minecart. Let me get some rails. Now, you could have a few hopper minecarts just bouncing around. I think it's a little bit easier if there's just one hopper minecart per hopper per dropper. You do want to build this wall for the water stream up 2 blocks, because when the items get spit out by the dropper, sometimes they'll hop up on top of that block unless there's a cover. Okay, let me get some water. There we go. And just to keep things clear while we're working, I'm going to put a little trash system right there. Any items that get dispensed will end up in that trash. So to demonstrate, let me just toss some blocks in. They get spat out into the water stream and then into that little trash. It's not the fastest auto dropper, but it is so far the most consistent one that I can find. I've tried a couple different versions, and this one works, so far has worked every single time. So that is the item collection system. Next, we're going to work on the stone block generator. Oh, it looks like we're all out of redstone here, or not redstone, bone meal. So we can actually see the rates. We got two full stacks and 28, so it's a little less than 2.5. That's partially because we have these all these different composters that are at different fill levels. We could probably get another 2 bone meal out if we had only put it into 1 or 2 composters. But then that runs into issues of backing up. So it's just better to have more and not have to worry about it. So the way that this farm works is we have on all 4 sides we have stone generators. Stone is generated when lava falls onto water. When the stone is generated, it gets pushed out. The act of it being pushed out will actually break the moss block, which can then get collected with a water stream. So we're going to start building the collection system. So let me clear my inventory. Or not the collection system. We already did the collection system. We're going to start with the stone block generators. So I'm just picking up a few blocks here and there. And I think that should do it for now. So starting with your item collection system, you're going to put this setup over top of the hopper minecarts. Wait, no, wrong block. So what I'm using here is stone to represent where the generated stone will end up going. And I'm using the concrete to show the blocks that are not going to be pushed. So if you were to have it stone, it's not going to break the farm, but just know that you will never be able to collect those moss blocks when they get converted. So overall, we have a 7x7 grid. And then from each side, we're going to have a solid block. I'm using polished granite just because it's a little different. And 2 more blocks of stone. I do recommend using stone in the creation of this farm because it will mean you don't have to worry about getting things primed and ready to go. Next, we're going to do a line of glass over top this last layer. And then a second layer of glass on top of that. On the side opposite your collection system, you're going to want to punch out these 3 blocks and replace them with a dispenser. This is going to be where the water that flushes all of the items out is going to be coming from. Okay, so that is that for the moss pad. Now we're going to need to do our water sources and pistons. So going down one block, you're going to want a whole line of solid blocks on all four sides. Everything we do on one side, we're pretty much going to replicate on all four sides, with a few exceptions like those dispensers and the item collection system. Okay. We then want stairs on either side. You want to make sure that these stairs are next to that polished granite, because if it's next to smooth stone, then that means it's in a spot where it could get pushed, and that would break the farm. And then in the middle, you're going to want a slab. Now these stairs and slabs, I'm using cut copper here, just because I like the contrast. You can use any stone, any stair or slab. I would recommend staying away from wood, because we are going to be using lava, and I don't think using lava and wood next to each other is a very good idea. Okay, up next we're going to go back 2 blocks and put obsidian. We need the obsidian to line up with these stone blocks. The obsidian is going to be behind the pistons. The reason we need obsidian behind the pistons is if we don't, then the pistons on the other side could actually push the pistons on this side and make things a little bit broken. So naturally, when you're building this, you're going to be using scaffolding blocks other than actual obsidian. But for me, in creative, it's just a little bit easier. So you're going to need a total of 16 obsidian in that arrangement. And you're also going to need 16 regular pistons, all facing in. Okay. We have one more side. On either side of the pistons and in the middle, you're also going to want a solid block just so the water does not leak out and cause problems elsewhere. Okay. Then we're going to get some water, and we are going to waterlog all of the stairs and all of the slabs. Like so. Build up. I'm going to switch blocks here. So as far as powering these pistons, I'm going to be powering them with a line of redstone that I'm going to lay on this dark gray concrete. I'm trying to color code things to make it a little bit easier. So the dark gray concrete is the stone generator. There we go. On each of the stairs, we're going to want a piece of glass. You don't have to use glass at any of these points. You can use any solid block. Again, I would stay away from flammable blocks, but that should be it. Then we're going to get lava. And we just need one lava source on top of the slab. When the lava falls onto the water, it creates stone, as you can see in there. And then I usually like to cover over the lava, especially if I'm in survival. That way I don't accidentally fall in. Okay. Now for some redstone. The powering and depowering of all of the pistons and all of the mechanics are based on what's called an Etho hopper clock. So it is a clock that runs because of these hoppers, and it was designed by Etho, so that's the name, an Etho hopper clock. You can have this anywhere. I'm going to put it here just because I want it to. I actually included the dimensions of the hopper clock inside of the dimensions for the build. So if you have the hopper clock from somewhere else, then you can actually shave off a couple blocks. But, you know, there are lots of ways to rearrange the redstone. So ultimately, the hopper clock is based on items moving back and forth between these hoppers, powering and depowering these sticky pistons that move this redstone block around. As far as how much to put in here, usually 6 blocks or 6 items is good enough. You want to make sure that they are they are stackable items, and they are 64 stack items. So do not use ender pearls or snowballs or any of the 16s, and you should be good. Then we just need to run this redstone line, and you'll see every 2 times this moves, we get a pulse. Now, as far as making sure it gets all the way around, we want all of these pistons to trigger in sequence. So these will trigger first, and then we have 2 repeaters for a little delay before the next set fires. 2 repeaters for a little delay before the next set fires. And then 2 repeaters for a little delay for the last set. So that is it for the control mechanism for the entire farm. I'm going to power that block. You could also power this block. It's just a great way to shut off the farm when you're not using it. Now let's get over here. And the next 2 circuits are kind of, to be honest, they're kind of a jumbled mess. There are better ways to do it. You know what? I'm just going to do the bone meal creation. So we want, off of this redstone line, we want to bring a redstone line up. And into a T flip-flop. So a T flip-flop is a little circuit that turns every pulse, essentially cuts the number of pulses in half. So we have go. So we have the Etho hopper clock triggering, and it triggers the pistons. We want the bone meal to be triggered every 2 times the pistons get triggered. So in order to do this, we have this little circuit set up right here. We want to read off of that. So by having an item floating around in here, when the signal triggers, it's going to cycle the item through. So right now the item is in this dropper, but when I power the redstone line. Oops. Did not mean to do that. Or that. So when I power the redstone line, it moves the item around. A button was not a good way of powering this. So let's try to show this off. Oh. Okay, I see what I did. I built it one block too low. So then I just need a hopper pointing in there. Nope, I want it pointing down. Okay. So we see this trigger and turns off, and then we see it trigger again and turns on. So that's what we're looking for. The reason we want to do this is because we're only generating one block of stone at a time. We're only pushing out once, and that's only wiping out a fraction of the moss. So we actually need to have 2 piston extensions for every time we generate the moss. So then we go into this kind of cross shape with a hole in the middle, dust, and dust, repeater on full delay, repeater on no delay, a dispenser into a moss block, and then a piston facing down. The reason that we have this piston is if there is grass or azalea or moss carpet on top of this moss block, the dispenser will not be able to actually use the bone meal. So that should be it for this system here. So if I actually get some bone meal, I should be able to demo how this works. So let me put 10 in there. So we get it powering, pushing, pushing, and then powering. We get a push, another push, and then a power. So it looks like it's not quite clearing all of the moss because there is this moss carpet on top, kind of making things look weird. The way that we're going to get rid of that is by using these dispensers that I have placed on the side to flush water out and break all of the moss carpet. So for this, we're going to need to do a different kind of circuit. And we're actually going to need to be pretty careful about this. So coming off of this block, we want a repeater on 2 ticks of delay, so you need to click it once, into a sticky piston facing up with a block. That then leads into another repeater with no extra delay. That repeater needs to face into a solid block. And then here we go. So we're going to have 1 redstone dust there. Kind of make a shape like that with 2 repeaters on full delay. Now every time that a pulse comes through, it will actually get 2 pulses out. We will get 1 pulse when this redstone block is, or not redstone, when this solid block is powered. It will power this redstone dust and immediately power all the dispensers. And then this redstone dust will also get powered, but it will take some time to work through the repeaters and then trigger again. And we just need to run this line all the way down across the dispensers. Now, you could have this elevated by 1. There is a chance that one of these items will end up on top here. The problem with elevating it by 1 is we would run into this other line. So this is just the simplest way to make sure that we don't have that cross-contamination between the 2 lines. We just need some water. And water bucket in each dispenser. Now when we turn it on, we can see what's happening here. So we get a signal and then another signal. And a signal, a second signal. And that is powering and depowering the water, which is allowing all the items to get flushed out. So we can see this in action. We can see that almost every single moss block is destroyed before we have more moss generated. So that is pretty much it for this farm. Kind of the tricky parts are getting all of the timings down right. So let me kind of work through those timings again. So we have a classic Etho hopper clock with 6 items in here. You can try tweaking the number of items, but if you run it too fast, it's not going to work. So if anything, I would maybe even go up to 10 items. That will slow down the farm, but this is kind of an AFK farm where you don't really need to worry about it. Other timings that are important, we have these stone generators that need to be staggered. 2 repeaters with no extra clicks is good enough, so that's 2 ticks of delay for each one of them. In the bone meal dispenser thing, we have a T flip-flop, so we're powering this bottom dispenser, or dropper, actually. This bottom dropper is facing up, this top one's facing to the right, the hopper is facing down, and this bottom one is facing to the left so that the items will cycle. We have a comparator reading off of the bottom dropper into some redstone dust. And then these are the next tricky timings we have. We have this repeater on full delay and this repeater with just 1 tick of delay, so without clicking on it at all. That's because we want to make sure that we're powering the redstone, powering the dispenser to spit out the bone meal, and then breaking the grass. Over here is the next thing that we have to worry about. We need 2 ticks of delay into this sticky piston, 1 tick into a solid block, and then full delay on these 2 repeaters right here. So I think that's going to do it for this tutorial. If you've got any questions, comments, or suggestions, feel free to leave them below. As far as what you can do with this, you can do what I did over here and just pump all of the items into composters and get bone meal out. You can then have some of that bone meal pumped back up into the top. That way you don't have to manually load it. I would actually strongly recommend against manually loading this. You should be able to replace some of these blocks with hoppers. So for instance, we can probably replace this block with a hopper. And then we can probably replace that one too. So you can have, a hopper chain coming from that bone meal generator. So, instead of a chest here, you can have an auto dropper like the ones we built over here, that spits the items up into a water stream onto these hoppers, which then chain into this dispenser. So that would be one way you could use it. You could also have an item sorter where you're getting bone meal from somewhere else, and these items are getting sorted into moss blocks, moss carpet, azalea, and seeds. You could have an overflow that then spits it into the composter, where after you have, let's say you have a double chest of each of those items, you don't really need them anymore. You can flush the rest into bone meal and recycle into the machine or into other machines. But anyways, that's going to do it for this episode. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments area below, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.